In this episode, I muse about motivation and why we do horses and how that may or may not affect the results we get. I'll also share another story of how smart my horse Atomic is. So here we go, episode 214, Why? Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So let's get started. Hello, everyone. I am sitting here huddled up to my podcast microphone, draped in a blanket to keep me warm and an oversized hoodie because it's a cold, cold Florida winter's night. And before you laugh at me too much, we have had multiple days where it's gotten down to 32, right, the freezing mark. And we've had frost winter wonderland mornings. And and I do have to turn the heater off when I record the podcast, so it is a little chilly in here. But don't worry about me. I'll be fine. Anyway, I wanted to start this episode with a little story about Atomic again. It was in, I believe, episode 211, the Random Thoughts episode, where I shared how Atomic had taught himself a new trick, where I'd been doing a trick with him, and then he took this ring that I was playing with him with and was like, hey, instead of doing the thing that you're asking me to do, I could do this other thing that you haven't asked me to do, but I think it's a good idea. And anyway, you can go listen to that episode and hear about that. But I had another moment with Atomic that just, again, blew my mind. And my mind should not be blown because horses are amazing and they are all so much smarter than, I think they're smart, and they still blow me away. I still think we're not even tapping the surface of their amazing potential and capacity. But anyway, I'll share this story. So those of you who are in the classroom may remember I did a video where I show teaching Atomic what I call the Find It game. And so the Find It game is I have this little square piece of plywood, and I taught him, find it means touch it with your nose, and then you get a treat. And then I move it around and hide it in more and more difficult areas where maybe he doesn't see where I put it. Or it's not visible. He has to go look. Maybe it's underneath something. And so I just make it harder and harder for the horse to find it. And it's really cool because it shows, it's easy to lose their motivation. If you make it too hard, they just give up. Which horses give up, which ones don't. How much will they hold the thought and keep going? So that's the game. And like I said, the game always starts with me taking the board, showing it to them, saying, find it. They touch it. Okay, that's the beginning of the game. Game on. So I was thinking the other day when I was playing with Atomic that I wondered, how much does he know the actual phrase, find it? Is he reacting to the, I present it to him and he's like, oh, there it is. Now we play the game. Or is he really understanding the cue or the words when I say find it? So he was busy drinking some water, and I thought, okay, while he's over there drinking water and he's not looking, I'm going to go get the board out of the tack room, and I'm going to go hide it somewhere. And then when he's done drinking, then I'll just say the words, find it, and I'll see what he does. I thought that would be interesting. So that's what I did. He's drinking, went in the tack room, got the board. He's not looking. I go hide it somewhere. And when he's done drinking, he comes over and I'm kind of in just the middle of the barn aisle, halfway down the barn aisle. And I just look at him and I say, Atomic, find it. And he spun around and he went into the tack room. And I headed towards it and he's starting to go in it. And my first thought was like, because sometimes we have cookies and, treats and stuff set up in there. So my first thought was like, no, like Atomic, don't just go in the tack room. And so he's like marching over there and he's going in and I said, Atomic. And, he usually will back up when I call his name when he knows he's somewhere he's not supposed to be. So I was like, Atomic, Atomic. And then I walked over and looked, and he is in the tack room pointing with his facing, his nose is sniffing the part of the counter where the board was. Now, it's not always in the same place in the tack room, and I've never had him in the tack room when I go get the board. He's seen me go in the board to get the tack room. He's seen me go in the tack room to get the board. I'm sure he's noticed that I've come out with it, but he's never seen where in the tack room I have it. So when Atomic heard the words, find it, he not only did understand exactly what the game is, but he instantly realized, well, you never got the board out of the tack room, so the board has to be in the tack room, so I'm going to go in the tack room. That's got to be where it is. And it was a split second. So I thought that was pretty impressive. I expected what I thought would happen was I go find it, and then he'd kind of, oh, okay, and then he'd go look in the normal places where I normally hide it. Because I usually start with some easy ones, and, there's only a few different places I can hide it. But he didn't. He absolutely instantaneously thought, I didn't see you take it out of the tack room, so it's got to be in the tack room. Let me go get it. And he apparently knew exactly where it was in the tack room, even though I've never shown that to him. So again, I think, oh my God, that's so amazing. And then my next thought is, well, they're so amazingly smart. Why am I surprised by this? Anyway, I just thank you for listening to my story about Atomic, because he blows me away just every single day. And for those of you in the video classroom, or if you want to see that game, you can go to the video classroom and search under tricks, and you'll find it. Find it. All right. So what I wanted to talk about today on this podcast is thinking about why we do horses. A while ago, I made like a little reel clip, one of those little short things, talking about how you can, one way to like help horse welfare is to every now and then ask, professional that you see, like, hey, why did you get into horses in the first place? Right? Because I think a lot of people get into horses because they love them. At some point they were a little horse crazy kid, and, I hope, and they loved horses. And then you can sort of ask yourself, like, all right, if you got into horses because you just love horses and the amazing power and the feeling, then the next question could be like, how is what you're doing now a reflection of that? And I'm sitting here talking, and I'm sure that there are people who get into horses because they think they can, I don't know, get rich or, sell expensive ones. And maybe they aren't motivated by things like love. But I think probably everybody here listening to this podcast is. But we can also, all of us, myself included, we can get off track. Maybe we don't think we forgot why we're doing horses, but maybe the expression of that just kind of started going down a different path and we didn't notice right away. And then all of a sudden you look up and go, how did I get here? Right. So, and it can change also, I think, at different stages of life. And, you have a goal and a motivation and you reach it. And then something needs to change, or you have a different horse. Nothing like a different horse to change your motivation or force a change in your motivation. Or you just change as a person. You evolve, you grow, you get into a different stage. So this very simple question, why do we do horses? Like, why do you do horses? And then the next question is, how is what you're doing a reflection of that? How is what you're doing? How is that manifesting? Is what you're actually doing with horses a reflection of your why? And have you revisited your why? Are you using an old why? One that you haven't really reflected on in a while. And so I think I've been reflecting. Well, I reflect a lot. Let's face it. So I'm always reflecting, but it just feels like, I don't know, a special time to reflect a little bit more. I just feel things changing, a different stage in my life and a different stage with horses. So I've been thinking a lot about why I do horses and why now do I do horses, and what do I now want to not get out of it, but what do I want to feel from it, from my experience. And my why always has been, and I hope it always will be, it's just because I love horses. I mean, I just can't not be with them. As my husband Dana pointed out the other day, when it was like 30 something degrees and 14-mile-an-hour winds, and I'm out there all morning, and I come in later, he goes, "You must really love horses if you were out riding in that." And I'm like, "What wind? What cold?" Anyway, yeah, so it's always been because I just love them, right? But why I do what I do with horses shifts all the time. Right. So in the beginning, it was just a little kid and I loved horses. So I was a kid, I love them. So I'm just with them. I'm just doing stuff. I'm hanging out with them. I'm just being around horses. And I didn't really care about anything else. All I wanted to do was to be with them. And then, as you start, you start spending more time, of course, you're going to take lessons, and then there's stuff to learn. And I was a kid, so kids are supposed to learn stuff, right? I mean, your kids are in school, so everything is school. If you're doing this, you're going to learn how to do it better. If you're doing that, you're going to learn how to do that better. And so what I was doing with horses was learning. I was taking lessons. I was in training, stuff like that. And then, of course, naturally, the next step for many people like me is you start going, hey, I learned some stuff. There's a competition. Let's measure it. Let's see if I can do that stuff to a certain score or do that stuff better than the other people who are trying to do the stuff. Right? So even though my motivation, my why was why? Because I love horses. But why I was doing what I was doing with horses was because I wanted to measure it. I wanted to have that goal. I wanted to see, that challenge. Could I get over a 60%? Could I get over 65%? How about 70? Could I win first place? Could I be a champion? Could I go to this championship and then be a champion there? And then the next kind of natural progression of my life with horses was, I got good at it. So then people started paying me to do it and wanted help from me. And so I became a professional. And so why I did what I did with horses was my job. It was a job. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved my job. But it was, I was being hired to advance a rider or advance a horse. Why did I do it? Because I love horses. How lucky am I? But why was I doing what I was doing with horses? Well, it was my job. Let's teach this rider things and let's teach this horse things. And then, and then they compete, right? So other horses I'm competing those horses and those riders are competing. And then for me, of course I'm always learning. I'm still taking lessons, but there was a big shift in my life where then I learned new skills. So why I was doing stuff with horses? Well, I was learning a new body of education and body of skills and techniques. So I had new skills to learn. And then a shift in how I was a professional, because now it was not just training a horse and training a rider, but it now became my job to demonstrate stuff and to educate in a different level, like to present. And I wrote a book and I'm doing group clinics and presentations and things like that. Why? Because I love horses. But why was I doing what I was doing? Because I was demonstrating, I was educating, I was showing an example of a new way to be. And this is all good, right? So this is just a natural progression. And now, like, why am I doing it now? Well, because I love horses. But why am I doing what I'm doing? Well, now I'm really more interested in just the feel of it. My why right now is more interested about relationship. What am I doing with my horses? I'm having relationships with my horses. That's what I'm doing now. So my why is much more about that individual horse in front of me and being in this moment. And I think sometimes it's really hard for me to think about a presentation on this or a demonstration on this or even a video on this, because I'm like, it'd be like, having a competition, like a marriage competition. Like, all right, I'll just be there with my husband and you be there with your husband and someone's going to judge like whose marriage is better. I mean, there's some obvious parameters that might eliminate some people from being a contender, but it feels like it's so unique. It's so unique to the two individuals that are relating. And it's, who gets to say what that dynamic is supposed to be? It's supposed to work. It's supposed to be agreed upon or something. So it feels harder for me these days to try to make a demonstration of this or make a video of this. It's possible, but I'm finding I'm not as motivated by that, because why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want deeper relationships. I want to be in this moment, and it's hard to demonstrate something else and be in this moment at the same time. When you're in this moment really fully, it's hard to have other goals, because in a way, I'm not really focused on getting anywhere. And I recently was listening to an Eckhart Tolle video or talk podcast. I don't know. I was listening to Eckhart Tolle, and he said this line that just like, I've listened to him a lot, but this one line was like popped out at me. And he said, "Don't live like now is an obstacle to overcome on your way to tomorrow." I'm like, whoa. Don't, and I might not have this perfectly, but don't live like now is an obstacle to overcome on your way to tomorrow. And that just felt like it resonated so much when, especially as a trainer and a teacher, it's like you're trying to get some result for tomorrow, and you have to overcome what's happening now. You have to improve what's happening now. You have to make now better. It's like, now's not good enough. We got to do something. It's an obstacle. It's a challenge. And that really just resonated. I think it popped out so much to me because it resonated with me right now with my horses, that I feel like what I'm doing with them right now is so much less about, it's hard. I almost said it's less about training, but I'm still training, like stuff's happening, but it's less about me having a concrete external criteria or goal. I'm less motivated about external markers that maybe somebody else can measure. Maybe that's the way to say it. Now, I do think it's possible to live in this moment now and really be here and not see now as an obstacle to overcome, but just to really drop in. I think it's possible to do that and still know what direction you'd like to be heading. Like, we can be in the moment while walking. So if I'm in the moment while walking to my house, it doesn't mean that I may not get to my house. I mean, I can still walk in the direction of the house and be in the present moment. So totally possible to still be heading in a particular direction and be in the now. But I'm sensing that those goals sometimes, those targets, can easily become a bit of an obstacle to being in the now. So the now is the obstacle to the goal, and the goal is an obstacle to the now. So I think to know that that's possible, now we can say, okay, it's possible that everything is an obstacle to everything else, or it's possible to be in the now and still head somewhere. And it's possible to head somewhere and still be in the moment. And that seems subtle, and that seems really important. And I do know, and I have experienced, that expectation, having that goal, having that expectation can change everything, right? Sometimes, it's helpful, sometimes it's not, as we'll talk about. But having that expectation changes everything. And changing your expectations changes everything. So I've been playing a lot more with having no expectation. And again, as a trainer, as a very experienced trainer, I am a master of having a picture in my head, an expectation, and helping horses and people get there. So I've been really, really playing with this moment, this priority on relationship and being in this moment and seeing how deeply I can get there, and having no expectations, no pressure on myself for any kind of external judgment or, goal. And here's the cool thing, that somehow things are still improving, things are still advancing, things are, changing in a way that I really enjoy. Maybe that's even a better way to put it. Things are changing in a way that I enjoy. Because advancing still makes it feel like, well, that's better. The advance is better than not advancing. Improving means if you don't improve, you're not as good. And so even just saying that seems weird because I don't have an expectation. How can you improve if where you are now is perfect? All right, so things are changing. Even if I decrease my goals, decrease my external pressures, things are still changing in ways that I really, really enjoy, that feel more harmonious, that feel more full of ease. And I think it's about doing what we need to do to make the best decisions in this moment, right? We only have this moment to do anything. And I think the seeing what the next best step is for you and your horse is easier to do if you're in this moment fully, if you're really seeing everything that's happening right now. And that's where things will unfold more naturally, right? Instead of saying, you must get a clean flying change today, I'm gonna make it happen, eye on the prize, and you're missing so many pieces of information happening actually now that are telling you why that's not going to be successful, or it's going to be a lot harder and more forceful than you need to be, right? So our best decisions are always going to happen in this moment where we kind of have this idea where we might go. I'd like to end up with a flying change, but you've got to ride the horse in this moment, in this stride. And then the changes will come naturally. And we can always reflect on our results and we can contemplate different choices to get different outcomes, right? So just saying we want to be in this moment and maybe we want to drop expectations doesn't mean that we just go, well, and whatever happens, happens, right? So it's like I can have no expectations, no external motivations. And I'm saying no, but I mean, I'm probably not there yet. But this is what I'm playing with. So even though I can say I don't have any external pressure, I don't need to prove anything to anybody, I don't need to demonstrate anything, I just want to be here with this relationship and be my best, I can still reflect and notice, I'm doing this and then this happened. I did this and then that happened. And I could contemplate different choices that would lead to different outcomes. So I can still do that. But to aim towards something without feeling like you have more focus on trying to get there than you do on what's actually happening underneath you, in front of you in the moment. That's the nuanced part. The other day, I caught myself at the barn. Well, I was at the barn and I was like done at the barn. And I'm like, oh, I got to get to the house for lunch. So I'm at the barn. And then the next thing that happens in my mind was then I'm in the house and I'm eating my lunch. And I caught myself in this funny in-between moment where I thought, okay, I've been at the barn and that's the barn stuff. I'm going to be at the house doing the lunch thing. And that time between the barn and the house seemed to be like just stuff that necessarily had to happen on my way from the one important thing to the other important thing. And the getting there was just an inconvenience because we live in time and space. I had to walk. It was going to take a couple minutes, and then I'd be doing something important again. And so I caught myself, because here I am thinking, I'm trying to focus on being all in the moment. I'm like, well, what's happening in those couple minutes from the barn to the house? And what's happening in every step and every footfall? And there's actually a lot of stuff going on in that moment. It's not really in between anything. The walking from the barn to the house is not in between time. It's all equally important. It's all the same. I mean, in between is exactly as important as any other moment. But my focus wasn't there. I had thrown all my energy ahead of myself. My brain was reviewing what I did with the horses, and at the same time, I was thinking about what I was having for lunch. And I completely missed the couple minutes, the however many 100 steps I took. And then I thought, if I was missing all of that, I wonder how many other times I'm doing that in my life, with my horses. What am I missing? Because I'm thinking about what I just did, and I'm thinking about what I'm about to do. It's so easy to do that, to lose the moments between the pasture and the barn, or the barn and the arena with our horses, right? But to the horse, everything is equal. Everything. And if I'm thinking about I want to be doing things in the moment and doing things in relationship, boy, I just blew myself off. I was not in this moment, and I was not in relationship with myself. I was somewhere else. More to practice. And as I'm in those lost moments where I'm thinking about what I just did and I'm thinking about what I'm about to do, sometimes we need to think, right? Sometimes we need to review what we've done. And sometimes we need to think about what we're about to do. I think that's a good practice. But I don't think I was even doing a good job of doing that. Because I was thinking about the past and the future all at the same time. You can't really do that. So I think to have a dedicated moment to say, and now the thing that I'm doing is I'm going to sit down and contemplate and review. What did I do? What were the outcomes? What would I change to be even better next time? Like that would be a moment to sit down and be fully in that moment. So the truth was that my thoughts were just distracting me. I wasn't thinking good quality thoughts. I wasn't actually getting much done as much as I would if I'd sat down to journal or to really drop into that review. So my thoughts were just distracting me from being in them now where things are actually happening. And if I do that with a horse, they pick up on that right away, right? I'm doing a thing while I'm reviewing what I did yesterday and thinking about what I'm going to do next. And I'm sure my horse just wonders where I am the whole time. All right, so lately, as I said, I'm relaxing my external pressures and I guess some internal pressures too. I think nobody's as hard on me as I am. And so I'm really trying to do my horses just for me. Doesn't matter if I'm a professional, doesn't matter that I have all that experience, doesn't matter that I'm an educator, doesn't matter I'm trying to take all of that away. They don't have to be or do anything other than they are, or anything other than just what happens. I'm trying to eliminate the shoulds. I'm looking for a feeling of no time and no time restraints. It'll happen as it happens, in my best abilities to be my best for the horse in any moment. And then we'll just see how long it takes. No external goals. Can I do it really just for the love of it? Can I really do it just for the love of it? Not because I have to make a video, not because I've got a competition. And I know lots of people who have said, professional especially, like, well, if I wasn't competing, I wouldn't know, like, I wouldn't be interested. And I mean, I'm not judging. It's just not me. So can I just make each moment clearer to the horse? Can I communicate more clearly? Can I make everything more easier, full of more ease, more harmonious, more understanding? And so then, here's the paradox. Like I said, things are measurably improving, even though I am dropping all those pressures. And in fact, I've had some of the best rides and sessions with my horses. I mean, like with Atomic, who I just play silly games with. I mean, he's blowing me out of the water. I think it's actually easier to be our best when you take away those external pressures. I think it's more possible, or people who take away the external pressures, I think there's a better chance of being and acting and doing, more artfully as a master horseman, when you have that sense of time and no pressure to compromise what you really feel like needs to happen in the moment. I think it's harder to be in the moment and do our best like that when there is an external pressure telling you have to be a certain level with a certain criteria met at a certain time in a certain place. Those are the things that make us compromise, or make so many people compromise. But here's the thing that I also know. On the other hand, this is where I get lots of hands. On the one hand, this. On the other hand, that. On the other hand, apparently I have more than two hands. So on the other hand, those external pressures and measures can really help sometimes. They can create accountability. And sometimes an external conscience can be helpful. You need somebody there to help you be your best and to help you live up to some agreed standard. Sometimes it's helpful to have people watching to keep you your best self. I remember reading about a behavior experiment with people, and I think there's like a conference going on, and they put a table out, and on the table was some like stuff. I forget whether it was like candy or just some little things. And they just left it there. There was nobody attending the table. And then they watched the table, and they looked at how many people took something off the table. And so it really wasn't clear whether this was free, go ahead and take one, or if it was like, oh, there's stuff on the table and someone just walked away from it and you weren't supposed to take it. So they would look at how many people took stuff off the table, and they counted that. And then they made one change and did the experiment again. Exact same table, exact same everything, but they had a mirror on the other side of the table. And they found that if there was a mirror there, fewer people took stuff off the table. And so sometimes, in order for us to act our best selves, it's helpful to have an external pressure. It's helpful to have an audience, even if that audience is yourself. Simply them seeing themselves in the mirror as they took something or did something that maybe they would say would go against their better judgment, or, I wouldn't be I'm not someone who steals something. Well, maybe you would be if no one was looking. I mean, I think we can all have to admit that like we could fall for something like that. And there's lots of times when I've had difficulties with horses. And even now, if I have, my neighbor and I'll be like, I need to ride over there with you. I just want to make sure, like, to help me not get frustrated or to not get stuck or not to be hard on myself. If I feel like I can't be my best, sometimes having, I'll call it an external pressure, the eyes of somebody else can be helpful. Or, maybe if you feel like you get distracted and wandering around, you need a date on the calendar. And sometimes that easiest thing to put on the calendar is a horse show because there's a date. And you just put it on the calendar, right? And you can't change it. It's just there. So those external pressures can create accountability and can help us be our best. So that's the paradox, right? Because the external pressures can take us out of the moment and help us can hurt us by distracting us from the moment, or by creating too much of a dynamic where the now seems like an obstacle to overcome instead of dropping into it. So having concrete goals and ways to measure can help you move forward, or it could take you away from being your best. And having no pressure and living only for the moment can drop you into this deeper space of connection, or could leave you lost and floating around without knowing what to do. So it might be a stage thing. So at this point in my life, because maybe I have a certain amount of experience and education and I'm confident in what I know, that maybe that's what's letting me drop in and take away some of those external measures. So maybe it's a stage thing that, like, when learning something, you need to have checkpoints and ways to measure. And then maybe once it's learned, it can be helpful to allow yourself some space to settle in, to go deeper, just to feel stuff. But how long do you stay at each stage? Good question. Is it like you do 5 years of learning and then the next 5 years you just drop in and explore to the moment? I think it actually can shift from one to the other more nimbly and quickly than you might think. So not years, not months, not weeks, but maybe seconds. I think in reality, we're doing it both at once. We shift. And we shift back and forth appropriately. So we're like learning and then dropping in, and learning and dropping in, and checking and dropping in. And as you shift from having external goals or not, you don't need to be choosing between getting outcomes you want and not getting outcomes you want. Many times people think that dropping expectations and external pressures is really only an exercise in accepting that things aren't really going to work out the way you want and they won't improve. And it's really not necessarily. Having external pressures and goals does not guarantee progress, and not having them doesn't guarantee stagnation. It's all about creating a dynamic that works for you and adapting as needed. As I said, I can report that focusing more on relationship and what's happening now instead of focusing on trying to get somewhere else has not decreased my results. I've been having some of the best rides and best moments with my horses. If you're feeling pressured, comparing yourself, in conflict with your horse, you may need to give yourself some more space to drop in and go deeper. On the other hand, maybe you can keep your goals and your measuring system, but you might just need smaller steps, maybe checkpoints that are closer together. And if you're feeling like you're floating and you're lost and you're unsure and unconfident, maybe you need to find some accountability and some feedback and some measurable goals. Or maybe you really need to connect more deeply with your personal why and your motivation and your connection, and drop deeper into the moment so you're actually feeling more of what's going on. It also might mean, if you're lost, that your goals have changed and you just haven't noticed yet, or realized it, or admitted it yet. I know with me, it took me a while to figure out that my why had changed. My why for what I'm doing with my horses had changed. I'm like, why am I not motivated to make videos? Why am I? And I was being really hard on myself, of like, you should be out demonstrating more. You should be out presenting more. And I just didn't feel like doing it in the same way. I still love horses. I still jump out of bed every morning to go do them. I still can't wait to go out there. But I realized that the why I'm doing what I'm doing was shifting. And I just needed to do it differently. But if I'm doing it differently, but still judging myself based on the old goals, that's a problem. Now that I figured it out, it's all good. It's all good. So listen, I know that with this hand and then that hand and on the other hand and then this thing and the paradox, I know I'm giving you more questions than answers. But isn't that life? You're always going to need to find your own answers. But hopefully, this is giving you maybe new ways to observe your situation and new ways to think about your decisions, or changes that can help you experience what you really want to be experiencing. Hopefully something around having more fun, more harmony, more confidence, and more ease, and having things change in ways that you can enjoy with what you're doing. So how are you operating? And how can thinking about this help you? You know, what do you need to be your best right now? Or where do you get stuck? Where do you need to change? Do you need more space, less pressure, more freedom? Or do you need more accountability, more external observation, more external goals? And just remember, it might change at different times. It might change from horse to horse, moment to moment. It might change as you evolve in different stages in life. But I think it's really important to know that this is a thing. This is, these dynamics are happening often in the background. And the more we can realize them and figure out where we are in that dynamic and is it working for us, and to know that there are dials you can turn, I always find that to be really helpful. So I hope you did too.